Welcome to the Hammer Factor, where we help successful athletes and professionals share their genius with the world. I'm John Grace, your host here at the hot seat, and now it's time to light this fire.
All right, in this episode of the show, we are extremely stoked to have arguably the fastest single speeder in the world, holding 8 national titles and with thousands of miles of racing under his belt. Welcome to the hot seat, Gordon Wadsworth.
All right, man. Thanks so much for having me. The seat is hot, man. I'm nervous.
No reason to be nervous, man. There's nothing to be nervous about here. How you doing? How you doing with the whole quarantine thing and the current state of affairs?
We're well, man. I mean, not to make light of the health challenges that a lot of people are facing, but my wife Emily and I are doing our part and staying pretty distanced. But that's kind of a part of our lives anyhow. I mean, we live in a little town in southwestern Virginia. We live on a dirt road, and we don't see a lot of people unless we leave our little pocket to go out and see them. And so it's been kind of nice in its way to reconnect with each other a lot in our area and doing rides that we don't normally do this time of year. So we're trying to do our part and stay safe and stay rad and stay distanced. And it is what it is for now. Yeah.
Yeah. I think some of the unintended consequences of all this are, there's a lot more family time going on, and I mean, we're taking advantage of it. Sounds like you are. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge, we all get so busy in our day-to-days that if we can reconnect with that, that's a massive benefit. I mean, sometimes it's easy to get caught up in the next thing. And when you take all those next things and you throw them out the window, I think it's good to teach us all to be present a little bit more.
Yeah, in the moment.
That's cool.
That's so hard to do too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, unless the whole world grinds to a halt, unfortunately.
Very interesting. Before we dig into this interview, can you share something with our audience that most people don't know about you?
Oh man, I there's a lot of days I don't think I'm very good at bikes.
Now, how on earth is that?
Yeah, I mean, we all, I didn't actually think about how I would answer that question. I thought I'd let that one come a little bit. We all have these moments of I won't say doubt, but I think we all have these times where we consider that we aren't, what do they call it? Like imposter syndrome or something, where you think that you're not, you're faking somehow. And I think everybody has a little bit of that, but I won't say that that's that, but, I'm a person just like everybody. I may ride a bike with one gear really, really fast most of the time, but there's definitely days that it doesn't always feel that way, and it doesn't always click. And the struggles of somebody like me who have been and seen a lot of places with the bike are just as tough, man. It doesn't ever get easier. You just go faster, is what they say, right? But yeah. That's something a lot of people probably might assume, but don't necessarily know. Yeah.
I think as you labeled it, the imposter syndrome. I mean, it's easy to second guess yourself no matter what level you're on.
Yeah.
So I think whether you're starting or been doing it for decades, it's easy to do that. How do you fight it off?
So, I mean, like we all do, I think that one of the benefits of that discomfort sometimes is you're really surprised when you do well. The more that I get to do, the more confidence you have in your ability to tackle challenges. And so no matter how you're feeling on a start line, or no matter how you're feeling going into something, because life's more than just bikes, right? You have built a really great portfolio of experiences that I can look on and say, man, I tackled that, I did that, I conquered that, I felt great in that. Or hey, I had a bad day and I learned this from it, so I'm carrying that into it.
Right.
So I think that's part of it, is acknowledging successes and building some confidence from that. That's also kind of conveniently one of the things I enjoy most about racing bikes, riding bikes too, and world travel and going out the door is that kind of surprising yourself with your abilities. That's so much fun for me.
Before we get too deep into that subject, which I want to touch on later, where are you from? How did you get into bikes? What was a young Gordon like?
So I'm from Roanoke, Virginia, little southwestern Virginia mountain town that's grown really, really beautifully in the past decade or so. And I grew up there. And I remember thinking, like, this is a cool town to grow up, and it's a great town to end up. But everything in between was I expected would be elsewhere in a big city or something. And at some phase, I went to college outside of Richmond, Virginia, and then came back to town, and then kind of bumped around for a few years. I was a ski tech, trying to do bikes as hard as I could. I worked in finance for a little while. Again, bikes kind of as a through line for all that. But then I met my wife, Emily, and we bounced around the Southeast. We lived in Tennessee. We lived in Georgia. We lived in Kentucky. And eventually we kind of put down on paper where, all the different places that we thought we might really enjoy living. Places like Chattanooga and Asheville or Brevard and Knoxville, like all these neat Southeast mountain towns. And Roanoke just kind of kept popping up on our list. I'm from, again, Roanoke, and she's from Floyd County, Virginia. So when we looked at what we wanted in a hometown, Roanoke had it all. I mean, it had this great mountain bike community, this great outdoor scene. It's got tremendous trails and amazing roads and Blue Ridge Parkway and backcountry single track and all this awesome stuff. And so we came back, ended up back here, and love it, man. We live outside of Roanoke now in a town called Shawsville, on a little horse farm way tucked back in the boonies. We love it back here.
It's beautiful up there. I know that country quite well.
Yeah, love it. But man, I got, my family is not riders. We're not all cyclists. I wasn't born onto a bike by any means. I don't have a whole lot of memories as a young kid of bikes. I mean, they were toys, playthings. But then I do remember at one point I got two older sisters, and my oldest sister brought home a road bike from college, like her freshman or sophomore year. She'd been a runner and had picked up a bike at like a local bike shop, and she worked there for a couple of years. And I just remember that was a moment where it was like, whoa, this thing is more than just a toy, right? This is a really amazing tool to go farther, faster than you can really get otherwise. And I do remember that moment, and from there, like played bike racer for a couple of years. And then in college, I kind of really got stoked on the idea of racing more competitively. And I was racing at the time. I got a really good deal with Gary Fisher bikes, that then got bought by Trek. And so I raced for Gary Fisher for several years when 29-inch wheels were a new thing. And then got doing with Trek for a couple of years, and then just have ridden a really awesome wave of support from a bunch of different folks in the industry, and continued to expand the types of racing and the ways of doing bikes. And that's been a huge blessing, to the point that it really is a through line. It introduced me to my wife, Emily. It gave me the job that I have where I work at bikeflights.com. So it's been an awesome ride.
Were you always on a mountain bike?
No, not necessarily. I started racing mountain bikes, but I don't discriminate, and I never really have. I thought for a while I might be a really good crit racer, and I was. But I've raced road bikes, I've raced mountain bikes, I've done short format criteriums and short tracks and that sort of thing, and of course a lot of long format, some road races, a bunch of ultra endurance and marathon distance mountain bike races. So people will kind of give me grief if I show up to an event on a bike with gears, but I'm gonna go for the bike that's gonna be the most fun. And sometimes that's a gravel race bike. Sometimes it's a single speed. Sometimes it's a big travel full suspension bike. It just is about whatever's gonna be the best carrier for the experience for me.
Following you on Instagram, I've definitely realized you don't discriminate against bikes. That is for sure.
That's for sure.
Tell me about the transition from being into it and being professional. How did that happen for you?
Yeah, well, so that happened kind of for me at a time when I think that that shift happened in the industry. I mean, when I was coming up in bikes, you saw Ned Overend on the Mountain Dew can dispenser in the break room. Like mountain biking was an extreme sport, right? It was a thing that was like dirt bikes and monster trucks, and it was like this sort of wild extreme thing. And with that came a lot of sponsorship money. I mean, we had teams like Trek Volkswagen and Volvo Cannondale and Specialized and all these big teams with big budgets, and they would have these huge rigs, and it was a totally different sport than it is now in those capacities. We had the Teva Mountain Games where there was massive payouts, and it was a way you could really survive as a professional. And about the time I was coming up through bikes, that really shifted, and it started to shift kind of in the early 2000s, certainly by the mid 2000s. When those budgets weren't available anymore and people started to shift away from, and I don't know if mountain biking's not extreme enough. It sure seems to me when I see, Brandon Semenuk sending it at Red Bull Rampage, it certainly seems extreme to me. But something about the format of cycling as a professional has changed, and it's really changed into a lifestyle sport, which I think is ultimately healthier. It certainly means fewer visits to the emergency room than sending it like Semenuk. But so to answer the question, what it looks like to be a professional has changed in the same time I've transitioned to being more of a professional athlete. And so while I still maintain a professional license, actually this first year second year, because it's 2020 now, that I haven't bought a pro racing license. And we can talk about that if you want, but because it really is more of a lifestyle sport. The support that I get from sponsors and the opportunities I get as an athlete are available now because of what we share, right? Because of content, because of writing and photography and sharing the experience. And so I think as someone who does it as part of my profession, doing bikes, that's shifted a lot. It's no longer about chasing a paycheck from scoring points. Not for most of the professional athletes out there anymore, Right. There's maybe a spectrum between Olympic hopeful professional athlete that draws a paycheck versus Instagram influencer that just is really good with a camera filter. And I think I slide more towards the athlete side of that because I do really love competition and doing well in it. But yeah, I mean, I think as more of a lifestyle athlete or adventure athlete professional now than a bike racing professional, it's an awful lot of fun. And that transition kind of happened when those opportunities dried up a little bit. It's hard to chase Olympic points, and it's hard to chase, upgrade points when there's fewer and fewer of those events and they're farther apart, and the opportunities to support that are fewer and fewer. I mean, I bet you, I don't know statistics on it, but I bet you right now in the US, there's probably fewer than 25, maybe less than that, like full-time professional athletes on the mountain bike that don't have a side gig.
Right.
That's sort of a sign of a lot of things.
I think that's outdoor industry as a whole. It's tough to be a professional athlete in the outdoor industry. Even in an industry, I mean, biking is a big industry. But still, it's tough to be a professional in that realm. Tell me about the pro license.
Yeah. So in the U.S. here, we have USA Cycling is our designated body for governing cycling. And I say designated because the International Olympic Committee, the IOC, is what kind of really matters, right? Anytime you look at a sport that has the Olympics or that there is an Olympic sport for, that kind of designates your governing body. And USAC, I don't think I'm going to disappoint anybody here, but they're struggling because I think that they don't contribute to the fundamental value of the sport. They don't make it more fun. And I realize that a governing body doesn't always make it more fun, right? They're not necessarily there to make it more fun, but in a sport like cycling that is such a passion sport for almost all of the participants, they need to realize that. They need to recognize that that's a part of it. So I last year recognized that it was not that money that sponsors were spending to buy a professional license. Within the U.S., domestically, that license is, it's $370 or something like that. I mean, it's not a massive pile of money, but it's money that was like, I'm not going to buy this out of the gate in the year because I'm not sure that I'm going to do any USA Cycling sanctioned events. With the rise with fewer and fewer mountain bike races going in that direction, and with gravel cycling really taking off like it has, I'm not planning to do any road racing this year. If I were to travel internationally to use that license, I would consider purchasing it. But even more and more international races aren't doing that. So last year I said, to heck with that. I'd rather make that donation to NICA, or another group that I think is putting that money to really good use, growing the sport, where USAC just wasn't for me.
Yeah, for our listeners who don't know, NICA is the organization of, basically high school teams and things like this.
National Interscholastic Cycling Association. And they have amazing youth support through middle school and high school level. And I think they do it in a way which reflects the absolute best parts of the sport. The bike is such a carrier for life lessons, and they do an awesome job of presenting those too. I mean, some of the NICA leagues are thousands of kids. I mean, they'll have race weekends in any of their member states that are 1,000 kids. Show me a grown-up adult bike race that has 1,000 adults a week.
Yeah.
And in any state, and it's like, this is what it's about,
Yeah.
So NICA's where it's at, definitely.
I don't want to go too deep down this rabbit hole because
it is a rabbit hole.
I've definitely talked about this not only with cycling athletes but other athletes. Yeah. I mean, even like in paddle sports, the U.S. Canoe Association, which is kind of the governing body, they've lost a lot of relevance. They got into this squabble over stand-up paddling with the U.S. Surfing Federation.
Oh my gosh!
Over who should control that sport, and it's just like you say, it's kind of lost relevance. I don't want to get too deep into it because I have a lot to say about this topic. But I think the governing bodies need to look at how they're going to improve and grow the sport, and not just who's going to represent that sport in the Olympics.
I would love to know, closing that out, I would love to see examples of other sports or disciplines where people think their governing bodies are doing really well. I'm sure they're out there. I hope they're out there. And rules aren't just always killjoys. But I would love to see. If there's a listener question opportunity, I would love to know somebody that thinks their sport's got it right.
I'm with you.
That they're doing good stuff.
I'm with you. I haven't run across it yet.
Me either.
But I'm sure it exists. On some level.
Yeah.
What about a mentor, Gordon? Have you ever had a mentor or anyone that kind of filled that role in your career?
That's a really good question. I've been really blessed to have a lot of them. Not having a parent who was an athlete, not having a youth coach or a college developmental coach or anything. I've had to find those mentors along the way, and sometimes different mentors for different capacities. And Roanoke is a great town because it's had cyclists for a long time. So there's all of these kind of local heroes. So I definitely spent some time when I was working as a ski tech and then in finance part-time trying to kind of make it as a bike racer. I definitely spent some time with some of those older men in particular who kind of showed me a lot of the ropes. I've had a lot of privilege to be in contact with a lot of really good riders over the years. A good friend of mine, Sean Tevendale, who owns Blue Ridge Cyclery, that you'll see on our race jerseys, has always been there and a really good partner. I would say he's a mentor in the capacity that he was a professional athlete that did 24-hour races, and then he opened a bike shop and was there for Emily and I in a time of need in our lives as well as in our racing world. So that he's always been a source of input or guidance or support. So Sean definitely. I might be missing somebody, but we've been really blessed to have a lot of people along the way who have helped us or given us opportunities to fail, which I think is sometimes where a mentor really shows their stuff. And given us leeway to make our decisions too. Emily and I have built a kind of racing program and field of support where we have a lot of freedom. We have people that give us a lot of freedom with product and with money and with opportunities. And they say, hey, go make something great, go make something really worth paying attention to. And we're blessed for that. And so we've got all these cool people in our lives, but definitely Sean Tevendale. Yeah.
Having a mentor, a strong mentor, is a trend among a lot of the athletes that we've had the opportunity to interview here. And I just can't stress that if you find a good mentor, you can skip so many steps up the
absolutely.
ladder. It's such an important thing to get you where you want to go. I always want to make sure I touch on that.
Yeah, that's good. It's because I haven't had that one person, but it's been a conglomeration of a lot of people being involved in youth cycling and NICA and what we have here, the Virginia High School Series. And we have a really cool youth camp called Cutaway Mountain Bike Camp that does just an amazing program. And Emily and I have been involved in that for the past 5 years, I think. That's really important to me because that opportunity to be that little bit of guidance or information and shorten that curve to getting the most out of riding is so important to us.
Yeah, there's a huge shift away from buying things, especially during this time of quarantine and COVID-19. The shift to experiences is just being more and more prevalent. Tell me a little bit more about that camp. Is it a youth camp? Is it for adults?
Yeah, it's a youth camp. So Cutaway Bike Camp was founded, I think, 10 years ago by a friend named Andy Guptill, and Andy was kind of he was kind of one of the great hopes of American cycling. He was USAC development rider, or then it was NORBA, USCF, US Cycling Federation, and NORBA, the mountain bike arm. He was like a USA development rider. He's my age, he's early 30s, and he works at a school called the Miller School of Albemarle, which is a boarding school, prep school in Central Virginia outside of Charlottesville, and he sort of wanted to develop this, I won't say elite because it's not all performance focused, but high level experience cycling program there. And he did that at the school and started to grow that out of the school about 10 years ago into Cutaway Bike Camp. And now they have 3 different camps that they run that are summer camps from Miller School, which has amazing trail on site. They have a bunch of day camps that they run as well, but they run an enduro camp for the last 2 years, which is really special. And they have Harlan Price and Sue Haywood. And this year I'm going to join them in enduro camp and get my tail handed to me by a bunch of little rippers. And then after that some of those kids stay over into race camp, and a lot of new kids come in. And in race camp, we have a really amazing group of coaches, including myself, who come in, and I'm there throughout the whole camp because it's like the best 2 weeks ever. But then we also have all these amazing folks like Jeremiah Bishop and other riders from the area who are incredibly talented riders with a huge wealth of experience. And we just brain dump on these kids. We do race simulations. We talk about tactics and nutrition and physiological well-being. We do all of the geeky racer stuff. And then and that's a weekend camp at Miller School. And then we do a travel camp, which is really when the fun begins, because we take off the race jerseys and put the baggy shorts on, and we go and we experience all these amazing areas in Virginia. And the eye-opening moments for these kids when they realize that mountain biking isn't just race numbers and circles and pocket parks. It is big backcountry rides in the George Washington National Forest. It is Stokesville, Virginia, and sitting in creeks after your ride. It is riding ridges in Douthit and touching West Virginia when you started your ride in Virginia. And it's such an eye-opening experience. And these kids realize wow, this thing, right? Speaking about things and experiences, this thing in the form of a bicycle is a tool for so much experience, and every experience is different. Whether it's the same lap of your pocket park or whether it is a totally big epic mountain ride, it is never the same experience twice, and that's I think what makes it really special. So Cutaway Bike Camp is something that's near and dear to Emily and I both, and is such a cool experience for those kids. And some of them, now that Andy has broken it up into enduro, race, and travel camp too, those kids really can get exactly what they want out of it. And kids aren't coming to race camp that just want to do bikes, and they're not coming to travel camp if they want to race. And I mean, some are, and that's cool. But it all the options are available, and I think that's so cool. And Cutaway Camp, I think, is unique and really exceptional. It's one of the best organized camps I've ever seen, but it's also not unique. There are other programs like that around, which is super rad. I want to go back. I mean, as a counselor, it's like the best week ever for me. Best 2 weeks. Like, this is literally what I want to do every day. So,
how many kids go to this camp?
They're limited a little bit. They have enduro camp is pretty small. There's a little higher risk there. So I think it's like 30 or 40 kids. Race camp, they get closer to 100 kids. It's usually like 70 to 85 kids. And then travel camp is limited because we travel, right? So they have this group of sprinter vans that they pile all the kids and bikes in. It's pretty bougie going down the road. But that one I think is more like 50 kids. Right. And it's not a cheap week, but it's not an expensive week. I don't know the cost, but I remember looking last year and saying, like, value for money, especially when you compare it to other summer camps, because good sleepaway camps are expensive. Mm-hmm. It's a solid value, and they kit the kids out too. They get all this custom swag, and they're like, it's radical. Yeah.
What about, this is going off script a little bit, but there's some cool things you touched on here I want to kind of dig a little deeper into. What is that? Tell me about the gratification you get from coaching.
Oh, man. So first off, selfishly, it's just really fun. Kids are awesome. I'm high energy. Kids are high energy. I love going to sleep tuckered out at the end of the day, mentally and physically, and that'll do it. Chasing around 85 kids during race camp will tucker you out. But the other thing too is that those kids, like you mentioned, you have this opportunity to kind of mentor them and cut down the number of stair steps they've got to make, or the number of mistakes they've got to make to have a really awesome experience every time they stomp on the pedals. And that's awesome, because I've made a mountain of mistakes in my journey, which was not a straight shot to having all the opportunities we have right now. And if I can cut that down for somebody and have them have a more direct line to the best possible experience, then that's great. I mean, making mistakes is an important part of life, but cutting that down for kids and showing them how to have a good experience, or being there when they do make a mistake to kind of pick them up and say, hey, that happened. It's okay. We can cry about it for 5 minutes because we're kids, or because we're adults, and sometimes we need a good cry too. Nothing wrong with that. And then we can move on from it. We say, what do we learn? So that's really cool. And getting to be a part of, again, selfishly, getting to be a part of that learning experience teaches me. I get to hang out with, Jeremiah, who's a really good friend, or Ben King, who's a national road champion and Tour de France and Giro d'Italia competitor. I mean, I get to hang out with these guys who I seldom get to see, and I rarely get to ride with casually. And learn from them a little bit, Yeah. I've learned a lot in those contexts.
I've done a little bit of coaching, and I'll say, outside of achieving a goal yourself, a close second is when you teach somebody something, or you work with a student, or even an adult, and they achieve something. That's a close second to being able to do it yourself.
Yeah, it really is. And I mean, from the perspective of bike camp, when you get to do that, en masse, and you have a bunch of kids that are hitting those goals all weekend, it's like, I mean, it's just such a ride. It's such a ride. Yeah.
Shifting gears, we touched on it a little bit as far as some trends in the industry, as far as the pro tour and, sponsorships and whatnot. But what about technology and bikes and what are you seeing going on right now?
Bikes are so good right now. They are so good. I So I started really doing bikes in the late 90s, early 2000s, and we were riding cantilever brakes, which did not stop well. We were riding metal, steel, and then some aluminum frames. And they were great fun. We didn't know any different. They were great fun. But, the Wonder bikes then were still kind of not that far different. Now, the bike you have 20 years later, man, you can go into Blue Ridge Cyclery or the Hub or Sycamore Cycles down near you, and you can spend $1,000 or $1,500 or $2,000 even if you want to get exotic, and spend that on a mountain bike and get such a good bike. And it's going to have a good suspension design. It's going to have good brakes and it's going to be pretty lightweight. Stuff's going to last. I'm totally impressed by bikes right now. I race for Pivot Cycles and Industry 9 and a couple other really amazing brands. And sometimes I'll lock into a bike to go out and do a training ride. And I'm like, man, I'm so blessed. This bike is a rocket. Their bikes are so good and they're so capable. And we now see, bikes that can do big drops and hits that are also 22-pound full suspension race bikes. And it's like, that is unheard of. And on the drop bar side, you have these gravel bikes. I mean, my Pivot Vault is my go-to drop bar bike for most of my riding, and that thing rips single track. And it's 19 pounds with a bunch of gear on it. They're amazing. And to me, what that means is that we can focus on the experience. And I think that's so cool. I did a race last fall called Unpaved, which is a gravel race. I came right home from Single Speed Worlds in Slovenia, and this race was going on, and a friend puts it on. And so I kind of was like, hey, you got a spot for me? And I went up and raced this thing. And I remember standing in the dark waiting for the start. There's about 1,000 riders, right? This race has gotten big. And I remember looking around, and the guy over there next to me has got jean shorts on in a non-ironic way. This person over here is wearing a trash bag over their flannel because it's cold and wet. And I'm like, I'm the minority here as a bike racer. These guys and gals came for an experience, and their bikes are salsa whatevers and trek checkpoints and these kinds of things. And the fact that these people could go out and they could spend, $1,000 or $1,500 on a really good tool for adventure is so cool, man. Yeah. On the high end, we have electronic shifting. We have my Pivot Mach 4 SL has a Fox live valve that adjusts like a Formula One race car. 5,000 times a second, it's tweaking its valving, and it's being optimized. And it's like, these bikes are so good.
Yeah. I get a new bike about every 5 years. I'm one of those people who re-ups about every 4 or 5 years. And every time I get a new bike, I'm just blown away compared, because I thought I had it good before.
You go from the Jeep Rover to the Space Shuttle.
Exactly.
Every time.
What's your take on e-bikes?
They're all right. So they're
Go on. I'm sorry. I love asking this question because it's a good one.
It's polarizing for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
I have a pretty deeply evolved opinion. So in my day job, which is also bikes, I work for a company called bikeflights.com. We do bicycle shipping, and I'm director of special projects there. So that means I get to build new cool stuff and help riders get their bikes new cool places. And I really love what I do from the desk, and enables me a lot of flexibility. So e-bikes, I developed our e-bike shipping program, which when you pile batteries into a box, all of a sudden they're dangerous goods. They're controlled, right? From a very rudimentary perspective, they are now dangerous, according to not me, not you, but the Department of Transportation, right? So immediately I see a challenge. I think that e-bikes as a trail user present a lot of opportunity to get some different and more or maybe less mobile riders onto trail. I think that they also represent a lot of challenge, and how we meet that challenge in the next, I mean, really starting 2 or so years ago. How we meet those challenges is extremely important, from a regulatory standpoint and also from a trail use standpoint. As a selfish, so like as a person who tries to think when I recognize that like there's a tremendous amount of opportunity with e-bikes. As a selfish, jealous trail user, I really value that skiing earn your turns kind of approach. If I'm 65 miles out in the backcountry and I got there on foot by pedals from my door, that is such a dear experience to me. And you have to train for that. You have to be fit and capable for that. And when you take down those barriers, I have a hard time not like feeling it in the gut a little bit. And I also recognize that what makes me safe in the backcountry is the fact that I've built up the competence to get out there. The fact that in my backpack is a saw and a lighter and a blanket and water filter. Like the fact that I've gone out here with all this stuff, and if it hit the fan and it went really sideways, I could manage that. And the e-bike user, you take down barriers. You turbocharge their ability to get into trouble in one way. And I recognize that that's a very real risk to other forest users and to the Forest Service and emergency personnel. So those are risks. I haven't done studies personally to know if their impact is that much greater. They tend to have big tires. Most of them aren't like motorcycles. From my day job, I know that class 1 and 2 e-bikes that are pedal assist are pretty innocuous when it comes to how they differ from regular bicycles. So you can get farther, they're heavier, those sorts of things. But I don't think that they're necessarily a threat. What I do see are high-powered, throttle-equipped e-bikes being a real challenge, because you give people a throttle and a motor and they're going to do stupid stuff. They just will. All you got to do is YouTube e-bike, and the first searches that come up are knuckle dragging bonehead jumps car at 40 miles an hour, or idiot on bike path like doing 50. And it's like that. You give people those options and they take it to the worst possible place. And that the fact that bike looks very much like my bike scares me. That's, I think, the greatest challenge we have to navigate is how do we separate those in a way where we don't require Forest Service personnel to be cyclists,
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Full disclosure, I was a hater on the e-bikes early on, and then I tried one, and it was really, really fun. But it's such a slippery slope. I mean, it is a motorized vehicle in areas that are traditionally human powered. So, obviously there's a demand for them. The lithium-ion technology is not going anywhere, but it is a slippery slope. It's going to be interesting to see how that's managed and the way it, just the way it integrates itself in with cycling in general.
I heard Mike McCormick, who puts on the Breck Epic and some of the best races out west, refer to it as, kind of take that tone of it's the e-bike's not evil. It's not wrong. I don't personally enjoy riding them. They feel like heavy, sloppy bikes to me. But they are a real challenge, and how we meet that challenge allows us a chance to redefine ourselves in the outdoor space a little bit. I don't think that our like IMBAs and things are. I think there's so much money involved. There's so much opportunity to make money, especially that makes me nervous too. I mean, again, in my day job, most of the folks I talk to about e-bikes are not cyclists. They don't have that love of the outdoors. They have a love of a quick trend that they can capitalize on, or that they can squeeze the throttle and go fast. And that anecdotally kind of makes me nervous too. But yeah, they could be awesome. They could be a real challenge.
Yeah, and the industry as a whole, I do see the dollar signs. The industry is definitely pushing this.
They do too. Yep.
But there could be a real easy backlash as far as, okay, well, if we're going to have those cycles, then we're just going to limit cycling in general in this area, So,
right. Good observation.
It's going to be interesting to see how it all, I don't want to get too stuck on e-bikes, but I mean, they're definitely a thing,
They are.
They're not going away anytime soon.
That's the truth.
What about what's your primary passions now? What stokes your boat right now? What floats your boat?
What cranks my tractor?
Mm-hmm.
Man, adventure, experience, sharing it with both Emily, my wife, and also with our friends and our sort of community. I love adventure and experience and kind of being mindful in those places. We have been really lucky in the past 6 years, 7 years to race our bikes on pretty much every continent and have awesome experiences we share with friends or other people or share them digitally, and I love that. I'm so addicted to that. Quarantine makes that a challenge right now. There's been a lot of Throwback Thursday moments, but even in our backyard though, we've really enjoyed getting out. But I love that. That's just the best thing in the world to me.
When did you first get into the multi-day adventures, traveling to foreign countries? How did that all happen?
Pisgah stage race, right in your backyard. My first, a really good friend, Stratton Delaney, who owns Starlight Apparel and the Black Bibs, gave me an entry a few years back to do Todd Branham's Pisgah stage race back when it was in the fall. Gnarly. It were long days, and I just got my tail whooped. But something about whooping my butt, because my first ultra race was the same way. I got my tail handed at the Shenandoah 100, and I said, done, never be back. And the first Pisgah stage race was kind of like, done, never be back. And the next year I was back, and the next year, and I think I've done 7 of them now. 7 Shenandoah 100s too, or 8. And that's it, man. It is like freebasing adventure and experience and sharing it in such a cool way. I mean, the stage races are both equal parts bike race and community event. They are so cool because you get to know all these amazing people that have signed up and are camping right next to you or are showing up at the Starline every day. And that's great in a context that we already know and love, like Pisgah or the Transylvania Epic in Pennsylvania, or the Shenandoah 100 right in our backyard, right? But when you take that and you pick it up and you drop it in, the jungles of Brazil, or you pop it in the southern islands of New Zealand, in the Southern Alps, or, freeing Africa, Emily Thomas Turner and I went to Africa 2017. And all of a sudden you realize, people are not so different. People are invigorated by the outdoors and challenges and adventure. They want to share with each other. They want to challenge each other sometimes. But when you get to share those experiences with other people, it is the most enriching and world expanding and shrinking at the same time experience. And that's addictive. It is so addictive. The kind of bike nerd in me loves building out the right equipment or building out the right, packing effectively and all that kind of stuff too. So it's kind of, even the prep is a lot of fun, and, how do you train for adventure? Well, you take adventures. So like the training is really cool too.
Which of those adventures, racing in foreign countries and travels stands out the most? Which one's kind of a story you would want to share?
Emily and I talk about that all the time. Like we really enjoy sharing, because I have a terrible memory and she has the memory of an elephant. Like she just remembers every little detail. And so we joke about that a lot. I have kind of memories for like time and space, and she has memories of details. So I love sitting out in a space and just soaking in the thing that we're doing. I loved our experience in New Zealand. I got to race with a friend, Sonia Looney, who's an amazing super athlete and superhuman. And I raced with her again in Brazil the next year. And she and I've raced together several times, and I love racing with her. She's just a killer. But she and I had a really hard race. We battled it all week, but we smiled a lot. We laughed a lot. We sang a lot. We shared a lot while we traversed the southern island of New Zealand, and that was really special. I got to race Pisgah stage race with Emily 3 years ago, maybe more, as partners. I love those partner stage races. They are like the most challenging and enriching way to do bikes. Doing it with your partner, your life partner, is even more challenging and even more enriching. And that, while it's close to home, may be a high point, but we've had some cool experiences doing that stuff, and I couldn't pick a favorite.
Throughout your career, what's the lowest moment you've had? Has there ever been a moment you're just like, I'm hanging it up, I'm done?
There's been a bunch of them. No, I don't know that I've ever wanted to hang it up. I don't know that I could. It's been too good to me and too much of a through line. And there's always a new angle to enjoy this thing called bikes to me, whether that's in the industry or it's as an athlete or it's covering something for media or whatever. There's always a new angle. It's a new type of bike, right? And maybe I'll be an e-bikeist next. There have been injuries that have been really challenging. When I was trying to get that sort of pro racer traction, I had a really nasty IT band injury, which I have a history of. I have some hateful muscles and tendons sometimes. And that took me off the bike and for months. And I had another little bout of that in spring of last year. At the same time, Emily had broken her leg. She'd crashed and broken her leg, and she was off the bike and totally incapacitated when she should have been enjoying her first summer break since she works in academia. And it was like, here, I was just laid up. Now you're laid up. God, what are we gonna do with ourselves? So I've had a couple of those moments, and they've always been new and challenging, and I'm so high energy that I'm a feeler too. That gets me into trouble, but I feel and I emote with stuff, and that makes riding an injury wave really hard sometimes. Particularly when my partner's injured too. Like it's tough.
Yeah, it's health is wealth. It's uncanny how many industry or athletes we talk to who have had such hard times with injuries.
Yeah.
It's definitely uncanny how that can bring you down.
On the one hand, it seems a little bit petty, and I recognize that. And when I had an IT band injury, that's like an overuse injury, right? Like, boo-hoo, I worked too hard. I had too much fun, and now it hurts. It's definitely not like that. But it is... Yeah, you kind of feel like that's part of that experience as an athlete when you have that injury. Is like, man, I'm bummed because I can't do the thing that I get this thrill off of, but I'm also bummed because like I'm not permanently incapacitated. Like I'm not in a wheelchair. I'm not, there are people that have it so much worse than me. I shouldn't feel this bad. Like there's a lot that goes into that, and I don't think that that's to be judged or to be hard on ourselves for. But it is part of that experience, both because we form very real chemical addictions to endorphins.
Yeah, I think that's a huge part of it.
That's a real thing. We're all a bunch of endorphin junkies. And also because it takes out our through line, just like now in this COVID-19 pandemic, we're all looking at each other like through our screens, like, geez, they're having a lot of fun. And it's like nobody's having fun right now. And if they are, it's not their preferred kind of fun. But you get this filter now, social media especially, and you're like, man, I'm just missing out. I have FOMO from all the stuff that I'm not doing, and that can be toxic too.
Yeah. That being down physically and physical health just trickles right into your head too. It's amazing how they complement each other.
Yeah, it definitely is.
What about Gordon? Let's switch gears to training. How do you train? Where do you find your most success with training?
Good question. And that's changed. That paradigm has changed for me in the past couple of years. I used to have all the time in the world. A 20-something hour week was like easy. I work part-time and I'm not dating anybody.
Right.
Great.
Right.
Emily and I still don't have kids, but we are married. We do have a dog. We do, both have relatively high stress, high demand jobs. Mine is relatively flexible, but when it's on, and it could be a 60-hour week still. So I used to be able to get that volume, and I built myself into a pretty good rider with that base of volume. And then about 3 years ago, the tables turned and my job started getting serious. Emily and I planted ourselves and started building a life a little bit more. And that time was compromised. The volume hammer was no longer working for me. And it took me about 3 years of being frustrated with not being able to take 100-mile rides 3 times a week, to where I was like, this is annoying. This is frustrating. And I've had coaches in the past, and those have been okay on and off relationships. I have a weird relationship with training in that I don't like some of the technology that makes that really effective. I don't want to get on my bike and have a connection error prevent my ride from being what it should be, or start my ride out on that foot, right? Zeroing a power meter and all that stuff. And that just really tees me off. But I had a friend reach out last summer after I was recovering from my injury, and Emily was battling the other side of hers. And he said, hey, a friend named Elliot Baring, who's a young dude who lives in North Georgia, but a really accomplished rider, very well credentialed as a coach for a young guy who's had a ton of experience and again, a ton of credentials, said, hey, like, let's do some work. And I said, yeah, let's do it. And so Elliot has coached me for almost a year now, and has that having a coaching relationship has really helped me get back to a healthy place with training. Rather than being frustrated that every day couldn't be a 100-mile epic, it's helped me take a lot of comfort in the days that are rest days, or the days that are very focused and very hard work. It's helped restore some confidence and comfort in what's going on, versus just always having, to say FOMO again, always having FOMO for a bigger ride. Like, being confident in my process because there's someone who's partnering with me to give some oversight into that process is really important.
Interesting. So how does that relationship work? Is your coach specifically coming up with a training plan for you? Or is it constantly evolving? Is it just more inspirational? How does that keeping you motivated? How does it work for you?
I don't take a lot of inspiring. I'm pretty good at that. Blessedly, I'm pretty able to find a silver lining and get to the carrot. What I'm not good at is sitting. What I've learned I'm not good at is sitting down and structuring, because I can do that. I have all the experience to be able to do that, but I just don't. It doesn't happen. I'd rather spend that time riding, right? Is the ultimate reason, probably. So Elliot has done a really good job in and he and I communicate, like two athletes too. Like he knows me well enough. He and I have been race partners a couple times. We've trained a bunch together, so he knows the work that I know how to do. And so it definitely isn't necessarily a training plan that your average person would sit down and say, that'll work for me. It's not canned. It's customized every week based off of real goals. We sit down and we say, hey, what are good goals this year? What am I keen on doing? Or what are Emily and I keen on doing together? And that changes about every couple of months. We identify, we put a lot down on paper in pencil. And then as we get to, a couple of months out from those events, I'm able to commit and say, yep, we're going in this direction. We're doing this thing. This is the thing that's happening. And some of that's sponsor related, not much of it. Some of it's opportunity related. Some of it gets tossed in the trash bin because of a COVID-19 pandemic, but it's totally tweaked and customized and tuned, and we use all the regular tools that other athletes will use, like Training Peaks and all that kind of stuff. So, but it's been good. It's been really healthy for me to restore that confidence to a training cycle.
Right. What about on the level of accountability?
I'm pretty good there, and I don't it's nice to have somebody that sees that I did or didn't complete. um, but I'm pretty good after 20 years doing it.
Right.
If it's in the book, if it's in the cards, if my body can do it, it's going to do it. And sometimes even if it's not, it's going to do it to my detriment. But accountability component is nice. But I've never felt like that was. I mean, I want to ride. I want to go out and do stuff. If anything, it's hard to not do the longer rides when I do have the opportunity, even though the work that I need to get done is a shorter, is a 2-hour ride.
Right.
And I have 4 hours that day. Like that's harder for me. So in that way, accountability is a thing between, Elliot and I, between my coach and I. But as far as, man, I really need to ride today because it's on my schedule. Like Emily, on the other hand, she also coaches with Elliot now, starting recently, and her relationship is very different because she doesn't have that wealth of experience where she knows all about different thresholds and different intervals and different teasing out different results from the body or working different systems. Like, so for her, the accountability is really good. It's really good. She works a hard job, and so that's important. At the end of the day, she comes home and she's like, man, I don't really want to ride, but I need to, if this goal at the end of the month or in 2 months is real to me, and it is, then this is the step I can take today to get there. And that's important. That's,
Yeah. I've seen some coaches really be instrumental in some breakthroughs for some athletes. And, I always find that dynamic interesting. And like you say, everybody has a different relationship with their coach. They get different things out of it. I love hearing what that is.
And there's different coaches for different times in your life too. I think that's also important. People tend to think, oh, so, my coach and I just aren't jiving. Like, that's okay. That's cool. I mean, there's sometimes there's bad coaches and good coaches, objectively. There's a lot of coaches out there. Not all of that. And race results do not indicate coach results.
Yeah.
I'm the first one to say that because there's a ton of clueless bike racers out there. There's a ton. And some of them are real fast. Good observation.
What about you personally? Has there ever been a breakthrough in performance where you just had that aha moment? And if there was, if you can pinpoint that, what do you attribute it to?
I know that in 2012 through 15, I was able to get a lot of volume, just ride a lot, in a sometimes structured way, sometimes not. And that, dude, I joke sometimes that I've been cruising on 2014's volume for 6 years now. At this point, it's not even true, but it feels like it. I don't know that there's been one single moment. There have definitely been, I mentioned the Shenandoah 100. There have definitely been moments where I realized, oh, I was pretty good at that, and it felt pretty natural, and it was easy to build for and easy to complete or manageable to complete. There've been those times, and a lot of times they're hard events. I kind of joke with Emily sometimes. I did the Mid-South, which is a huge 3,000 rider gravel race in Oklahoma. I did that a few weeks ago. And I joke I was the first adult to finish. I was fifth overall, but there were 3 world tour riders in the pack, and there were cyclocross world champions, and there were all these amazing, super gifted athletes that, because the day was just so damn hard. I mean, it was just endless clay, mud, and just really hard going. I have this gift of being able to push through that stuff, that whether it's mental toughness or physical endurance, I have this gift for that. And whenever those moments happen, those are kind of aha moments. Those are like, man, damn,
I like that.
doing the right thing. I'm doing good at this. And you get the chills from that stuff, man. I mean, you get to near the end of a 100-mile mountain bike race and you're doing well. I remember in 2015, I won the Cohutta 100 overall on a bike with one gear. I beat everybody. And that's happened. I've been really blessed to have that happen a couple times to me. And that's an aha moment. That's like, dude, my legs are so good today. I didn't even need gears. Like, this is some crazy, man. And I beat a guy in a sprint that year. And it was like, that doesn't make any sense.
How does that happen?
I don't know. Right corner at the right time is how that year happened. But no, I mean, there's definitely been those aha moments, but never an inflection point when it all made sense. But they happen, and they're glorious, man.
What advice would you give to a young 16, 17-year-old rider, young lady or young gentleman who wants to really improve? If you had to give them one piece of advice, what would you offer?
It wouldn't be trust the process. Everybody says trust the process, and it's like, I don't know what the process is. What process? I see that and I always laugh. There's truth to it, but you got to know the process. You got to have a process. My advice, and it's the same one that I always give at Cutaway Bike Camp, because we do a couple nights of like pro Q&A, and I love those because those kids come up with the most sometimes wacky off the wall questions, and sometimes you're like, whoa, that's deep. And it's advice I give myself a lot, which is control the controllables and let the rest go. Do your preparation, think through, make all the decisions that you may have to make in a pinch ahead of time. That's the advice I give people for 100-mile races. Like, don't let yourself have to make a decision in the moment. Decide as much as you can, commit to it, but control the controllables and let the rest go. When we're in Tanzania and my back tire starts going flat and neither Thomas nor I have any idea how we're going to fix it, like we control the controllables by pulling over, being calm, assessing the situation, seeing what tools we've got, seeing what options we've got. But we don't run around with our hair on fire, And if we do, we don't do it for long, because that's a natural reaction. But control what you can, as far into the future as you can. Pick good travel arrangements. Give yourself time when you arrive somewhere. Like, have not put some new thing on your bike you don't know how to put together. Like, all of that, be prepared. I was an Eagle Scout, am an Eagle Scout. And that motto too, of be prepared, is like, duh, it's such a no brainer, but so many people go into stuff willy nilly. But yeah, control what you can, let the rest go, relax, recognize that it's meant to be fun. If it stops being fun, talk to a mentor about why, figure out why. And it could be because it's training, and sometimes it's hard. That can be the answer. It's not always going to be fun, but I think people spend a lot of time not being thoughtful about where they're at or their experiences too, So
I love that. Control what you can control and let the rest go. That should be a bumper sticker.
It should be. It probably. I know I'm not the first person to say it.
What if that rider wanted to turn it into a career? How would you advise them to go about that? Maybe what's a good way to get sponsorship? What's a good way to take it into more than just recreational and that next step to be a professional?
Mm-hmm. Be good. That sounds like be good at bikes. Rebecca Rush has her Be Good Foundation, and that's really what I mean. Like, be good, be kind to other people, be someone that enriches the other rider's experience as much as or more than your own. Be good to race promoters. Be good to your local bike shop, because every cyclist that I know who has a whole world of opportunity came out of a really good bike shop relationship. Lots of them worked there. Lots of them, shop ratted there and hung out. Like, your local bike shop is such an amazing place to get a kickstart. You surround yourself in a thing. That's big though. Be good, be kind, be enriching, be someone that people want to be around, and build your own story too. Right now, cycling, man, if you want to go after pro points, they're there, right? The Olympics isn't happening this year, but it will happen again. And that goal's there, right? And there's a very established path to getting there. But for the other, I don't know how many million cyclists in the country and in the world, that isn't a goal. And you can still have amazing opportunities and sponsorship and experiences through just being good, being compelling, being someone who enriches everyone's experience. I mean, some of the most impactful other sponsorship experiences I've had have come out of, the parking lot. Hey, I saw you talking to so and so, and you represented the product really well. Like, thanks for doing that. Like, here's a wheel set, or here's, would you entertain this? And that's part of it. Also recognize your worth. Emily and I are really blessed to work with the people that we want to work with, but that's not by chance either. If such and such a wheel brand comes up to me and wants me on their wheels, it's like, that's all right. Like, I've been racing on I-9 wheels since 2006. And they're really good to me. They have great product. They're super stylish. They're made, in Asheville. They're made in America. They're the right product for me, but they're also really awesome to work with. And that's a factor, right? Don't jump on free product or that sort of thing just because it's there. Do it because it's right. And if you engage with the product or the service or the experience or the brand, that's going to make you the best possible ambassador for that. And companies that are in a position, individuals, because it's always a person, right? So there's always a person behind those opportunities and sponsorships. That person is looking for a compelling story, and they want to get involved with you. Make the things that you do and you're involved in and the forces you put out into the world, make them worth being a part of. And things will happen. They happen, and they sometimes happen quick. And maybe you end up going like, Jesus, this me? Sort of like we talked about at the beginning.
Super good advice there. It's great to be the fastest, but if no one wants to ride with you, it's probably not going to work out for you in the long run.
And there can only be one fastest too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So, no, for sure.
Very cool.
What are you up to now? What's the rest of your 2020 year look like? I know it's definitely probably not what you had planned back in January, but what are you looking at right now as far as your schedule?
I grew a really cool mullet. I grew a mullet. It's pretty happening. Right now, man, we don't know. I'm talking to other event promoters and friends and athletes, and a lot of us took kind of a couple weeks away from the bike because all of a sudden the goals that we'd had were just poof, gone. Nobody knows what the next couple months will have, but we'll control our controllables. Yeah. We're being told to stay home and not be in large gatherings because that risks spreading a virus. We're being told to, stay close and stay near our families and that sort of thing. And that's we're doing a lot of that. We planted an awesome garden. Our garden's going to kick it this year, man. It's going to be so good because we got tons of time, but we're riding a lot. I'm probably going to come into the whatever race there is pretty fit because it's been a really good spring. Emily and I put on a gravel race that was supposed to happen April 11th. It did not, and that was a bummer, but that just gives us another year to plan to make it really awesome. It's called the Appalachian Journey. We just get another year to plan to make that really awesome. But we've got some cool content stuff with sponsors and partners and friends that we're trying to work on. A bunch of stuff like this, doing a podcast with you that's really fun, time to share and reflect and grow. What else are we doing? We've been riding a lot. It's been cool. I really like riding with my wife, and she's been getting faster and stronger, and that's super fun. I do hope that we can race some this fall because that community is strong and it's healthy. And I miss that. I do miss that. I'm an extrovert enough to really want and need that. Yeah.
What's the condition of the national forest and whatnot up near you? Here in Pisgah, they've closed down several roads and several trails. Are you seeing any of that?
The riding around here is no good. Don't come. Not really. We have a ton of national forests. We have the George Washington and the Jefferson National Forest and a bunch of state forests around here. And fortunately, that riding is not as marketed as the Pisgah stuff is. So they have not had to do any large scale closures. There's some parking areas and things which are closed, and I think that's prudent because that's really where the risk is. Right?
Right.
Is not your snot bubble that you make on the trail as much as it's your snot bubble you make in the parking lot. Ew. So there's a bunch of parking areas that are closed. There's, the Appalachian Trail is closed to traffic. But the riding is still open, and we have so many amazing. I mean, Emily and I last weekend, we took a 65-mile road ride, and we just kind of took our time and explored some new roads. And I clocked 42 miles where we did not see a single car.
Nice.
That wasn't like parked somewhere. And I was like, this is just like crazy cool. So we're working really hard to try and find some of those rides, like get the place we've never gotten and check it out and see some things we've never seen. And we've enjoyed that. So it's open, it's ripping. We had an early mellow spring, and so we've been riding a lot of backcountry stuff that we can't normally ride in the summer because it's covered in stinging nettles and just sweaty hotness. Yeah, it's open for solo business.
Nice. Well, I'm about to the end of my show notes here. Is there anything we missed or anything you'd like to add?
This is great. I've listened to a bunch of your episodes, and I really enjoyed the Tristan Cowie one. He's such a strong dude. He's such
an awesome guy, huh?
Yeah, he's such a strong character. I love him. He's the greatest. No, I mean, sounds like I was a rolling advertisement for Cutaway Bike Camp, which is cool. There's people who have kids that do that stuff. Cutaway's rad. I'm most looking forward to that in the next couple months because it's in July, and I'm like, oh man, I sure hope we can do bike camp. No, get out and get a bike. Spend time doing that with family.
Throw out some sponsorship plugs here before we wrap this up.
So I mentioned Blue Ridge Cyclery. I'm strategic about that, John. I'm efficient with that. So I mentioned Blue Ridge Cyclery, awesome couple of bike shops in Charlottesville, Virginia. I mean, we travel from Roanoke to go up there, and we need something because it's such a good shop. But Pivot Cycles in Arizona are my bike sponsor, and they're amazing. Every single bike they make, they don't make cheap bikes, but they make great bikes. Every single one they make is fantastic. They're tough as nails. They're awesome. Industry 9 wheels and componentry down in Asheville, Shimano bikes. I work with Carbo Rocket for nutrition and Floyd's of Leadville. I brought them on as a CBD sponsor this year, and that's really changed our game. CBD is a pretty cool way to relax and recover.
I've had some great experiences with CBD.
I hadn't really had any until this year, and a friend reached out and was like, "Hey, would you try some of this stuff?" And I said, "Sure. You have a good rep." So I did, and they're an awesome partner now. The Appalachian Journey is our gravel race. It will happen in 2021. Get out and ride, man. That's the thing. You can check me out on Instagram at Wadsworth. I've got a website as well that can link over there, quadsworth.com. Follow all that radness, and I love having folks along for the ride.
Follow Gordon, Instagram, Quadsworth. Great feed. I love following your feed. Always a pleasure, man. Thanks so much for coming on the Hammer Factor.
What a hoot, dude. I really appreciate your time and the guests that you have. So thanks for making me one of them.
All right. We'll see you soon.